Select what you want to affect. Okay, we're going to use the geometric tool, the elliptical tool. I want to draw from a center point, so I'm using the Option or Alt key. And if I add Shift to that, it'll make it a perfect circle drawn from a center point. Control D to deselect. The rectangle tool, if I just draw starting from that center point, it'll draw it from there. Alt or Option will draw that from a center point. Adding Shift will make a perfect square. Lasso tool works just like a pencil. I don't find this very easy to use because it's very difficult to follow a contour precisely. And as we know, the polygon lasso tool draws straight lines. Click, move the mouse, click, move the mouse. And if we zoom in and make very short moves, you can see that we can very precisely follow the contour of, in this case, an ellipse. It could be a building. I really use this tool a lot. And to complete the selection, go back to your starting point. Control D, deselect. The magnetic lasso tool works by click. Now I'm just moving the mouse. I don't have a mouse button down. And the selection is being automatically generated around that oval, but only because there's a very contrasty edge. You rarely find a situation where this actually works very much. I had a little boo-boo there, so let's zoom on in. And we're going to go grab the polygon lasso tool, hold down the Shift key, click, let go of the Shift key, click, move the mouse, click, move the mouse, click, move the mouse, and then we're going to come back to our starting point to finish that selection and add to it. Magic Wand tool selects certain tonal values. The default tolerance is 32. If we select 64, it'll grab a wider tonal range. And if we go up to the select menu and grow, it'll gradually grab more and more tonal range. I don't find that you really use this too much. Quick selection tool, we can go inside that gray area and very quickly grab that. If we go out into the color area, and I want to make sure I'm in the add, I like to use this tool but slowly, and you can see, boom, it kind of figured out what you wanted and very easily selected everything. Magic Wand tool, we can click inside the gray and it grabs everything simply because that gray is a solid color. And if I go up to the select menu and inverse, now everything except that gray area is selected. And we can see that we can use any selection tool to add or subtract from any other selection tool. I have a rectangle tool, held down the Shift key, and I'm adding to the selections. Or you can click on that icon. That also is the add instead of using Shift. And here is a cutout. And this third one I hardly ever use, but anything outside the new selection will disappear. So the elliptical tool, draw a couple of those. Now hold down the Shift key. And you're adding to it, or use that icon to add to the selection. This will be a cutout or subtract. And this third one, anything outside of the selection will disappear. Don't use that too much. Elliptical, polygon lasso tool, Shift, click, move the mouse, let go of Shift, click, move the mouse, click, move the mouse. Come back to our starting point. We added to our selection. Now Alt, click, let go of Alt, move the mouse, click, move the mouse, click, move the mouse, and go back to our starting point. We subtracted from the selection. Lasso tool that works like a pencil. Hold down Shift, let go of Shift, and just draw and come back to your starting point. Any tool can be used with any other tool, selection tool, to add or subtract from a selection. And it's nice to know that because there's a lot of times it comes in handy. Okay, we've got the Magic Wand selection tool and the Quick Selection tool. Hold down Shift, start moving, let go of Shift, and we're adding to that. So we can see that those two can add or subtract. Now use the minus symbol, or you can do Alt or Option, and you're subtracting from that. Here's a case where I clicked on the blue sky with the Magic Wand selection tool, went up to the Select menu and Grow, and you notice the selection did grow. Do that one more time, didn't grow too much more. So let's go grab the Quick Selection tool, and it is on the Add, and there we go. Using the Magic Wand selection tool again, I'm going to click in the sky. But this time when I go up to the Select menu, I'm going to select Similar, not Grow. And what that will do is select non-touching or non-contiguous areas. Grow will only select touching areas. We have a moon in the sky and we want to select just the moon. So I'm going to grab the elliptical marquee tool. I can just draw, but when I hold Shift down, I get a perfect circle. And I get it approximately the size I need. When I put a selection tool inside a selection, I can move it. Rather than keep redrawing, I go up to the Select menu and go to Transform Selection. I hold down the Shift key to make sure that that stays a perfect circle rather than an ellipse. And gradually work with that circle until it is exactly the right, correct size as the moon. I'll even use the arrow keys when I get really close just to move that selection tiny bits at a time. And when I'm finished, I can hit Enter or click that icon. And we're going to go to Select and Mask. And we have a very hard edge, so let's smooth that a little bit and feather it to give it a little bit of a blur. It becomes more realistic. Control J puts that on another layer, and we can work with the moon for color, tone, whatever we want to do. Okay, we've got a moon on its own layer. And let's use the marquee tool just to kind of show you what you might be able to do with that sometime. I got a selection, Control J to a new layer. Got a curves adjustment layer, and I'm just going to make that a little lighter. What I want to do is put some text over that, and we're just going to write the word moon, but rather than have moon, that word, just over the sky, or maybe we want to be able to have to read that text a little easier, this is one way you might use that marquee selection tool to make the sky in a certain area just a little bit lighter. Let's work with color range to grab some tones. So we go up to the Select menu, go to Color Range. There's an eyedropper. I'll click on some skin tones. Move the fuzziness slider. Keep in mind that white is what our selection will be. I can click on the eyedropper with the plus symbol to add to our selection. Or I can just go up to the pull-down menu and select Skin Tones. It looks like it grabbed pretty much everything I might want to work with the skin. Control J, and I can do some adjustment layers on it. Go up to the Select menu down to Color Range. And we want to select highlights. And I like to grab quite a wide range of highlights. I like to have the mid-tone shadows and highlights overlap. Going to go ahead and Control J. Name that layer Highlights. Go down back to the base again. Select menu, Color Range, and midtones. Like to have those up pretty high too. White will be the selection. And we'll Control J. We'll rename that later. Back to the Select menu, Color Range. And we're going to grab shadows this time. White will be the actual selection part. And I'll do a Control J on that. I'm going to turn off the two bottom ones, and you can see what our three separated layers look like of midtones, highlights, and shadows. So I'll rename that bottom one Shadows. And let's go ahead and put a curves layer on that, see if we can get a little bit more detail out of the real deep shadow parts there. And you can see we're getting a little bit more detail, but we don't want the light part to get too light. Then up to the next layer, and we're going to rename that midtones. We're going to grab a hue and saturation adjustment layer. We're going to clip that so it only affects that layer. Select blues and saturate them a bit. And go to that layer also and add color balance. And this one we can add a little bit of red to the midtones. You can also work with shadows and highlights to add colors. We're on the highlights and with a curves adjustment layer. And I want to clip that just so it affects that layer. And with the highlights, I want to darken them just a little bit. This has been a bit of an overview about selections. I hope it's helped you out a little bit. And at this point, you've probably noticed there's more than one way to do the same thing. And that's okay. Probably the best thing to do is simply to work with all the selection tools, but especially the polygon lasso tool and the quick selection tool. I find I use those the most. And understand how you can add and subtract from selections with any selection tool, and also refine those selections. And we'll work some more with that when you guys come over.